Anybody, citizens to be heard and Zoom?
Did any of you folks want to speak outside of a topic of a public hearing
In this,
online?
yeah, citizens to be heard section.
Probably not, because I think that's over here for that reason.
Okay.
Sorry,
Any-
can you all clarify, have we started? Because you all just came off mute maybe 20 seconds
okay.
ago, so
Yeah,
we're a
we
little out of
just
context.
We just called the order.
Great, thanks.
And we asked for citizens to be heard. Steve, we have none right now. Unless there's somebody online that has, that's here for the citizens to be heard section. Seeing none, we'll go on to ex parte communications and disclosures. Do we have any today? Looks like not. We'll move on to approval of meeting minutes.
A motion to approve the meetings from, or the minutes from our May 8th meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. A second.
I'll second.
Okay, Steve, second. Guess we call for discussion or just move to vote?
Move to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous approval. The meeting minutes for May 8th are approved. Move on to presentations, 15 minutes.
And I don't think we have any of those.
No
No
presentations today.
presentations.
County Commission update, our liaison is not here today.
She is
so
up north doing
Other business.
other business. Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to general business action items, discussion and consideration of approval. First one is Lisa, update on HDHO revisions in progress.
Okay, great. So we originally were hoping to get the HGHO topic on the commission's agenda for the last meeting as a workshop. That didn't happen. We're still at that stage. We were still collecting some information from HASU and some of the contractors that we've reached out to get some ideas about just to answer all the questions that we brought up at the last planning commission meeting. And we felt that if we had gone to the commission at that stage, we really wouldn't have had much to report on at that point, and not enough data to really have a good workshop. And so we pushed that workshop to the next commission meeting, which is June 6th. And we're going to be, so we have representatives from HASU coming. We're going to invite also Caitlin from the Land Trust and a few others. The commission would really like to have that kind of those people who've been involved in the housing and were around at the beginning of the HGHO adoption to kind of provide the context for what the original intention was for the HGHO. And then we're going to be looking at kind of all the information that we've been collecting over the last, since April 24th, since we had our joint workshop, and kind of evaluating that and seeing which revisions would make sense at this stage. I do want to report too that we have some good news on the HGHO front, is that the Viewgate Terrace development recently they've submitted their bonding and they recorded their phase 2, which we've been kind of waiting for and cheering for them, and they finally got it through. And so that, I think they're like even really close to getting their building permits finalized.
Yeah.
So they're going to be going forward like full on, I think, hopefully like
I would think.
breaking ground soon. And the new name they've changed the name though since. What, do you remember what it is off the top of your head?
No.
I couldn't remember either. It's not Viewgate Terrace anymore because they did transfer ownership, but that's the 120 or so unit apartment complex right behind the Wyndham Hotel. So that's going to be happening moving forward. And then the other one that we've been waiting on is Desert Soul, and that's 42 units of townhomes. That will be wrapping up within the next week or so. We're just waiting on the county engineer to approve their revised civil plans, which was at their request. They wanted to revise their something about the project that made the civil different. So they're moving forward full speed as well. Finally, I know it's been many months, maybe a year. So, and then the last HGHO project that's on the docket, really, besides the two small community rebuilds ones, is the one that's on our agenda for tonight, so Peakview. And then we'll be looking at just wrapping up the little community rebuilds projects, and that'll be it for HGHO,
Yeah,
like
those are
as far as,
Yeah.
as far as processing through our office. So that's my update on HGHO. If anyone has any questions or comments about that topic at this
So the
point?
June 6th thing
Mhm.
is not a joint meeting with the commission. This is the commission's kickback to us. Is that kind of the idea?
It's gonna be at the regular county commission meeting before the meeting. It's a
Okay.
workshop at county commission's regular meeting schedule date.
Okay,
So it'll be with the commissioners.
okay,
And of course, the planning commission members are encouraged and welcome
Okay.
to participate. Yeah, for sure.
okay, I see.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be like that joint meeting format?
It's not like formally like a PC, no, the planning commission, county commission joint workshop is, it's not that
Okay,
again, but it doesn't mean that the planning commission can't be there and provide like input, for sure.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's even really that much different.
right,
Yeah,
okay. And it's kind of like the ruminants of everything to kind of find, like, we're trying
Yeah.
to narrow down some
yeah,
things.
and so like my staff report will have like specific revisions that are based on what the feedback was from that workshop, and then more information that everybody has been asking to get since
Okay.
the last couple meetings. And then, yeah, they'll be kind of workshopping to kind of get to a point where we can decide, okay, these are the revisions we want to do right now, and this is what's maybe we're gonna wait on,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we know a time on that yet?
I don't know exactly, it'll be before the 4 o'clock meeting. I think there's an economic development department workshop also, so that's gonna be an hour, and then this will be an hour, so it'll either be 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, I'm not sure which one is coming first.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
I guess you'll send out a meeting notice once you get that.
Yeah.
info.
definitely.
Okay.
Would you potentially want to consider rearranging the agenda attached just to accommodate Steve's
Sure,
being here so that we can get through the planning or through the public hearings? Do
sure.
you need to make
yeah.
any official action to do that
And
rearrangement?
then come back.
Oh, you're
to-
talking about to do the PQ thing
Right, to
first?
do both of your
Or
public
hearings.
hearings first.
Sure,
So what you're saying is we should move item number 4 on the agenda to the next, and then go back to 2, 3, and 5.
I would suggest 4 and 5 next, and then going
Okay.
back to 2 and 3.
Okay. Anybody object? All right, with that, let's just go ahead and move it. So we'll move next to the public hearing to consider ordinance approving the amended and restated development agreement and master plan for Peakview.
And I can start off just by giving a brief of the staff report for the project. This is Peakview's amended development agreement and master plan. And so on November 6th of 2019, County Commission had approved the Peakview HDHO district and preliminary plat via ordinance 612. Subsequently, the County Commission approved phase 1 final plat in August of 2020, which consisted of 16 residential units, 13 of which are deed restricted for actively employed households per land use code section 4.7. The remaining phases 2 through 5 have yet to be processed for final plat. The expiration date for approval to final plat was November 6th of 2021. The Peakview amended development agreement describes a phasing plan and final plat extension for each phase as measured from the effective date of the approved amended development agreement at master plan, which would be proposed to be June 6th. The proposed extensions are described as follows: a 6-month extension for phase 2 final plat approval, a 15-month extension for phase 3, a 21-month extension for phase 4, and a 27-month extension for phase 5. This essentially is 6 months between each phase, except for between phase 2 and 3. The applicant is requesting a 9-month extension as phase 2 includes twice as many lots as phase 3 or 4, and thus more infrastructure would be required to be installed. The reason the applicant has given for delay in the final plat approval is for the remaining phases includes delay caused by COVID-19 pandemic and associated increase in cost for delays for construction, county staff transition and shortages during county approved since the county approved the HDHO development, and deficiencies within the land use code and being silent as to how the lapse of approval is otherwise affected by phasing plan. In addition, the applicant filed an administrative appeal with the county and then a complaint in the Moab District Court challenging the application of certain provisions of the HDHO ordinance and rules and regulations to the project. The litigation was subsequently dismissed without prejudice, meaning that they can refile, but also delayed the applicant in pursuing further phases of development. The proposed amended development agreement and master plan is in conformance with the land use code provisions of Article 4.7 high density housing districts in that the plan provides the minimum 80% deed restricted lots for primary residential housing for actively employed housing. The amended development also includes the provisions of section 4.7.3, which defines actively employed households to include an owner or owner's representative of a business or entity with a primary place of business in Grand County, but fails to clarify that the local business or entity may hold a fee simple title to the HDHO lot or unit, so long as the owner or director qualifies under section 4.7.3A2. Additionally, the proposed amended master plan includes a phasing plan which conforms to the county's requirements in regards to the 80% set aside for the HDHO deed restricted lots per phase. Phase 2 and phase 3 set aside 81% of the lots for each respective subdivision phase, and phase 4 is also 81% deed restricted, and phase 5 is 78% deed restricted. At completion, the development provides 78 deed restricted lots out of 96, which does meet the required 80% for the land use code. So just to add a little bit of context to the breakdown of the extension months, because it's nice to kind of have a time scale to that. So the phase 1 extension would put the final plat deadline at December 20th of 2023. The phase 3 deadline would fall on, on September 20th of 2024. Phase 4 would fall on March 20th, 2025, and September 20th of 2025 would be phase 5 final plat. And then just to kind of remind everybody, we have already considered 3 similar applications for amended DAs and master plans. We had Murphy Flats, Viewgate, and also the Manderfield subdivision recently as well. So I can answer any questions if anyone has as well.
Those are all approved.
Yes, passed through so far.
Can staff speak to basically what the developer would have to do after getting final plat approved? Like, what does it actually mean then for as a building get built?
Are you asking what would happen after this stage, after they get their development agreement amendment approved? Or are you actual after?
For each
final
phase's final plat? Yeah, so say phase 2 and the final plat is approved, what then happens?
There's the 2 years of, the 2-year deadline to get your public improvements completed and inspected and approved. And so it essentially constructing the project would be in 2 years' time. Is that right?
Yes, just to get your certificate of occupancy.
Sure,
Yes.
yeah.
And that's defined in the subdivision improvements agreement.
And that would be for infrastructure, not necessarily completion of all the project.
The homes? No, that wouldn't be for the.
Yeah, I
homes,
don't think
just for
we have
infrastructure.
anything in our subdivision standards in the land use code that has a time constraint on actually building the project, like the actual units. So.
All But from a practical standpoint, basically, what you do with the phase development is you fund the future ones with the sales of the homes and the existing ones. So it kind of forces the schedule to stay intact.
Right.
Can I clarify? And just so you know, that question wasn't a test. I thought I remember, like with the HDHO specifically, there was the 2 years from final plat to get CO. I thought I heard two different things. Is that correct or incorrect?
I can go look in
Yeah, in the
the
land
code,
use
but I think it's just that in our land use code, there's always the requirement to complete the improvements, the public improvements for the project within 2 years' time. But I can check specifically for the HGHO. There is a requirement in HGHO this is why they're and so many of them have been in this predicament, is having to get their final plat extension through this amendment process that we're doing tonight. Because there is that 2-year period specifically in the HGHO that says, once you get the approved rezone, then you have to get your final plat approved and recorded in 2 years. There's that. So that might be the thing that you're kind of thinking of in terms of a 24-month period.
Yeah.
Unless HDHO, and Lisa's looking now, but unless HDHO says differently, section 9.5.5A of the land use code describes that if the subdivision improvements have not been constructed and accepted by the county within 24 months of the recordation of the final plat, said final plat would be null and void. I think that falls in line with HHO as well. I think they're the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything. Let's see, the only thing that expires in the HGHO is the ordinance. Sorry, that's the ordinance. Yeah, lapse of approval. The HGHO district approval shall automatically expire and be void unless the county approves and developer records a site plan or final plat for the HGHO development in accordance with the sections here. So within 24 months.
So then you'd have 2 years from the day that you get the rezone approved, and then another 2 years from the day the final plat is approved to have all infrastructure complete.
Right.
And that's infrastructure only.
Yeah, the code is silent on getting your
The
units
actual building
complete.
units.
Sorry, I think I had said certificate of occupancy. I had the ADO thing in my brain.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Steve, did that clarify?
Yes, thank you.
So,
Do we need a motion on the table?
yeah, before we proceed, I guess, should we
I-
ask if there's any other discussion?
Clarifying.
I do have one other question, and it's going to take me 1 second here to find it. So I don't think I caught this in my first run through of the agenda. But give me 1 second here, I'll find it.
And while you're doing that, I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page with the process for discussion. I think that has to happen. Discussion in terms of the merits of why you're making a vote one way or the other has to happen after there's been
After the
a
motion,
motion.
okay.
I think that's what.
And how about,
When do we have the public? This is part of the open
That happens
discussion.
before
Okay.
discussion.
So my clarifying question here, and sorry, did I cut anyone off?
no, go ahead.
So on page 12 of the packet, so you have the paragraph, in addition, the applicant filed an administrative appeal, but then a complaint in Moab District Court challenging the application. So then it says the litigation was subsequently dismissed without prejudice, but then in the next paragraph down, sorry, it might be 2 down. It says that there's ongoing litigation. So I'm confused. Were those 2 different instances? Because to me, that's contradictory information. I'm a little confused on it.
Is that in the attorney's section? Where are you reading that, Stephen?
Give me 1 second. So in the keep in mind paragraph. So the second paragraph after attorney recommendation,
In the staff
keep in
report.
mind, yeah, it's still on page 12 of the packet. There's
Oh, yeah.
Agenda summary.
which at this, so the purpose of the deadline is to ensure these workforce units are built in a timely manner. If they are not, HTHO units approvals lapse so that another developer can claim them, and then parentheses, which at this time requires the county commission to formally extend the HTHO. Waiting for the Peak View litigation to resolve.
I see it too.
And the discrepancy is with the staff report?
No,
Saying
this is in
something
the
different?
agenda summary
Oh.
within the attorney
I see
recommendations.
that. I'm in that section. Flat within 2 years of approval, the overlay, the purpose of the deadline. Oh, right. So can you restate your question, your clarifying question?
Yes.
Whether-
Yeah. So, well, I guess I'm confused because I'm viewing this as contradictory information. So on page 12, in the last sentence of the paragraph that starts with, in addition, the applicant filed, it says the litigation was subsequently dismissed without prejudice.
Okay, that's,
and-
is that, I need to actually get the packet because I'm looking at the individual items. and I'm not
If you,
seeing-
I could share my screen and I've got it highlighted now, if that's helpful.
Yeah,
Want to show you if you want?
You in a packet of this.
I got it. I don't know if that was, I don't recall that language being included in the staff report, if that came from the attorney's office,
It's in the agenda summary under the attorney recommendations.
the dismissal part?
The
It's
section
right
about
above
which at
that.
this time the county commissioner have not yet done, we're awaiting the Peak litigation to resolve.
Yeah, but I don't remember hearing anything
Oh.
about it being
Yes, are you
dismissed.
showing a screen right now?
Okay, so page 12 is where it says there's something about it
Yes.
being dismissed.
It's that thing at the top highlight.
Okay.
right. Yeah, that was one of the reasons for delay, correct, on that upper part? That's more of an explanation.
The litigation was subsequently dismissed without prejudice.
Well, and I see Jennifer has her hand up and I bet she knows a lot about this.
Yeah, I mean, is that okay for Jennifer to comment right now for clarifying?
I would think so.
You would think so? I would think so too. The applicant,
I'm thinking the second highlighted statement was just left over from previous county attorney comment
so,
and error in the report. Section.
We could also just like motion second and then open it to the public and then she can. So,
it's interesting because I do not remember this section right here being in the agenda summary, this part about, is that something that you think was added at legal review? Anyway, it does seem contradictory. The way I've always understood this is that we were still in open, the litigation was not going to be resolved until this process right here was done and with their development agreement, amended development agreement and master plan could be approved. That would be the resolution to the litigation. So, but maybe, yeah, we could, Jerry, do you want to welcome Jennifer Johnston to maybe provide a
Sure.
comment?
Yeah, Jennifer, if you could join for a moment to provide a comment for clarification on these two parts.
Yeah, I actually appreciate you guys giving me a chance to clarify, but what she just said was exactly accurate.
Okay.
Okay, so could Jennifer, just for the record, could you restate that, please?
So what she just explained is exactly accurate. So the case has not been dismissed. It was, yeah, it's essentially just been shelved. So what it is right now, we're just waiting for this process to be approved. If we are not able to get through this approval process at the terms that we've been agreed to with the county, then we have the right to bring that lawsuit back up. So until we've been approved, the lawsuit will not be settled.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jennifer from the commission? Okay. All right. So I guess, are we ready for a motion?
I guess the only thing that seems to me is they're asking for 27 months. Now, the county attorney, his only recommendation is that it be pared down to 24. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? My only thought is this is, I mean, projects take time. What's that?
Sorry to interrupt, Aaron. I think that would be substantive discussion that we'd have to wait until there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, can I ask a question though along those lines? Like, I had that as a question. So
Clarify.
let's ask question, then my motion, then my public hearing, then we discuss. Yeah, that was my question. So the recommendation by the attorney is that we cut back on what they're asking for, which is 9 months between phases, correct?
9 months, but between that one phase.
Between the one phase,
Yeah,
which is the
everything
additional,
else
those
is.
extra 3 months.
Mhm.
So the attorney recommendation is to not approve those extra 3 months. And to just go with the standard recommendation.
That's how I would read that, yes. Mhm.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand this correctly, so
Yeah.
I feel like I can vote on it and not.
Yeah, it is confusing. I mean, the amount of time between the phases is a little complex, but I think really what it comes down to is pretty much every single phase would be a 6-month period, except between phases 2 and 3.
I move to forward a favorable recommendation to the county commission to adopt the ordinance approving the amended and restated development agreement and associated master plan amended for Peakview and HDHO development located on 3640 South Spanish Drive, allowing for a 27-month extension for the final plat recording deadline. Conditioned upon the following: developer shall adjust the phasing timeline to reflect the following ordinance. And
So that's only optional if you're wanting to change
no,
it.
I kind of just like how it,
The-
27 months, that's what I'm proposing.
And then B is definitely a required condition though,
Yeah,
so.
so with that proposal, with the owner shall record the development agreement and master plan and real property records of Grand County simultaneously with the ordinance and prior to the application for further site plan construction or development improvements.
Good, that's awesome.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Steve, second. Okay, now we can open for discussion, right?
Yes,
Okay,
and as a public
You do
hearing.
public hearing first, right? Because then we
We
discuss
did.
after they
we did.
make all their comments.
Yeah, we did public hearing first.
Oh, we did already. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay, I
Yeah,
missed
there
that.
was-
Okay.
yeah, there were no comments from the public.
I just see it as, yeah, we're kind of, the only difference to me with following the county attorney, 3 months, what's 3 months to get this project going? Instead of having to sell it and all this other stuff, if the developer just needs that, let's give that to them to get housing done and built. And, what's 3 months in a housing scheme, so.
Any other discussion?
I guess also to me that delays, being in the construction world, this disruption, with COVID and all that is a pretty strong argument, seeing how that just turned everything from labor supply to supplies on its head, so.
Yeah, I would, I would add that this will be speculative, but it's informed speculation that if you polled every one of the developers that are operating with the HDHO, every single one of them would say, well, the major complications of really bringing these projects into fruition were because whether this was the unfortunate scenario of the county saying, well, anyone can buy these, but it's just the occupant that is meant to be the resident. That threw every developer for a major loop. And that's really where the majority of the delay, I would say, came from. And so to take a product and entirely reshape it to who the market is, like that was no minor undertaking. It was incredibly major, on top of COVID and the labor market in Moab. I mean, it is so hard to get anything built here. It is an incredibly expensive endeavor as well. And so to see that there have been delays, well, I, for one, experienced it. It's completely understandable. And to say no to this, there's other developers in line, I think is entirely way too optimistic. There are not, like, if we were to say no to a developer that's like here, ready, they've built 16 units, they've proven they can make it happen, like we've got to go with it, because there's not going to be somebody in line soon. Like we're going to be waiting another probably 5+ years would be my estimate. So we've got it.
Communications. Okay.
Sorry, could you say that again? I just didn't hear that, Makeda.
Not relevant. I was just clarifying about if we had done something. I don't know what, apparently I just missed a bunch of the meeting already. So I hear what you're saying. I'm also reading the county attorney is talking about how this would be kind of I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly, kind of an exception after we've already approved 3 other people and not given them any kind of additional time. Is that correct?
We've never had to grant more time than like, well, the last one that we did approve was a full year extension. That was the Manderfield HTHO. So they got a year from their expiration date to continue. And that was just enough time for them to get it done. But yeah, so nothing over a year. But again, the Manderfield subdivision was 5 lots, and this is a much bigger development phasing. I think the HGHO it was pretty vague and silent even on how to deal with the phasing of projects in terms of deadlines and expiration. Cool. So I don't think there was a lot of clarity provided in the land use code, unfortunately, on that.
Cool. Great.
I would assume too that the developers are motivated to sell things sooner than later. I don't know. To me, it's like that. There's little motivation to sell things slower than faster.
All right. Any further discussion?
I'd say food for thought with it all, as well as, like, if I'm hearing like this is kind of a, if this is passed, then we can just move forward. Where if this is to be denied, I would hate to think that our county is spending more money to fight, in legal fees to fight housing. It may not be our ideal, and it might not be on the timeline that we want, but like I think if I just expand the situation, like that would be an accurate headline. County denies proven developer, spends more money on legal fees, less housing is created. That's how I'm reading this. So I'd be in full support of saying keep going.
Yeah, these are like local developers, not necessarily like out of town pros, so as well.
Okay, further discussion.
Any more? Steve?
I'm good.
Okay. I guess we call for a vote. Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor? Steve? Okay,
Aye.
motion passes. All right, on to number 4, or number 5, rather.
Like, do we do a public discussion on
Oh,
that? I
No, I wasn't aware that we had done the public comment either, but I think that was before we pulled for the.
I'm just making sure the procedures are.
That was it.
Okay, so I am going to present here for you guys. I'm just trying to, I'm gonna share my screen with this little table that I created. Okay. Okay, so we have here the multifamily residential, 45, so MFR 45 density bonus incentive for low-income housing. So in a staff report presented to the county commission back over a year ago, on March 30th, 2022, planning staff presented a list of priorities for land use code updates related to housing. 3 of those initiatives listed in that packet were based on prior input from both the planning commission and county commission up until that point, and also from citizens providing feedback. So the housing initiatives that we identified to present as priorities to pursue in that next year were labeled Housing A, which was a workforce housing requirement for all new development as a use standard. This was modeled on the city's AEH ordinance. The county, this didn't actually go through. We kind of stalled out on it last year due to legislative changes that were happening. And so that Housing A has never gotten picked up again, but we did pursue Housing B, which was to adopt the zoning that would allow long-term camp parks or tiny home developments. That was the ADO. And then Housing C was to amend the Article 2.6 MFR zoning district to allow a density bonus in return for affordable housing units. And that is what we're finally getting around to doing. So I just wanted to provide that little bit of history, just the fact that we've actually been working on this and intending to get around to this for over a year. And it really was kind of being drawn out because we were working on that in tandem with the future land use plan and wanting to get the future land use plan through at least to a stage where we felt like we had a draft idea of what the map was looking like. And then, ideally you would have the future land use map completely done and adopted before making the land use code changes. But in this instance, we became aware of the potential for developers to apply for the low-income housing tax credit, and that deadline for application to prove that they have zoning for this kind of development is in September. And so with that in mind, the commission expressed the desire to go ahead and try to get this land use code update done even before we get the future land use map finalized. And so by establishing the MFR 45 zoning district, we are increasing housing diversity and providing housing opportunities for very low to low income households in the community who often find themselves struggling with housing security. Just last month in April, the Homeless Council reported that 98 people were seeking services related to homelessness prevention in Grand County. Of those seeking services, 78 of those folks were literally homeless and 20 were in imminent danger of being homelessness. It was explained that one of the reasons homelessness is on the rise, or at least is not decreasing, is due to rent relief ending in February, causing escalation of those seeking services. Land use code amendment. This land use code amendment is limited to the revisions required to establish the MFR zoning district and density bonus incentive only. So it's specifically amending Article 2 zoning districts. A subsequent land use code update will follow directly after this to establish the use standards and lot design standards, which are in Article 3 and Article 5 for the new MFR zoning district. A draft of those sections is provided in the packet, and staff is seeking feedback on the development standards proposed for this type of use. So we can get into that a little bit after the public hearing section, but I would also just welcome you to review the draft standards that we put into the packet, and then if you want to follow up with us via email and give us your feedback. But basically, these are kind of the major kind of sticking points for the development density bonus. It's 45 units would be the highest that we've ever gone in the county for density. So these types of developments would be they would be designated in areas on the future land use map in very kind of targeted areas where closer to town, with access to, job vicinity, proximity, and probably just, a pretty small area in terms of where this type of development would be designated on the future land use map. The other thing to keep in mind is that the location where we've already put this kind of designation on the future land use map is up against the foothills of the rim. So the idea would be to place that kind of building height only against the rim there, so that you're not having something sticking up in the middle of the valley somewhere, blocking everybody's views and kind of an eyesore. So the building height would be proposing to go up to 42 feet, which is actually already in our land use code. We already have in the HDHO 35B use standards, 42 feet is listed as the maximum building height. And that's actually the zoning designation for the Viewgate project. Although when they were getting their master plan approved, at that time, the fire department, and they've always kind of said this forever, is that they couldn't service a development that was over 35 feet with their current equipment. And so that has been something that's been an ongoing discussion with the fire department. Brandon from the fire department recently did say that they looked at it a little further and they've done some tests, and they say that they could get up to 40 feet if with their current equipment, if there was nothing blocking the building and the truck, like they could get that ideal angle of the ladder to go right up against the building. But there is a discussion going on with the developer of the city's project that is going through right now, annexation process. They've proposed to help fund a new truck because they want to go up higher as well. And so that's something that we can look at and keep, working on some funding to be able to get better equipment. But that would be something down the line. This part of the discussion here is just kind of laying out the zoning and the use. We wouldn't be getting to the site plan, like the actual approving the building height, until we get to the site plan application. And so at that point, we would be working with the fire department to make sure everybody's good with it. So interesting though, I had not realized that the 42 feet building height was already in our land use code. So it's not that much of a stretch. It's just a matter of getting the equipment. And then the parking ratio, oh, sorry, I skipped. Setbacks would be, so right now, we have a proposal for development that would be 15-foot setbacks. But what we're actually looking at doing is where these rezone requests would be approved, they would probably be in areas where there's already existing zoning, right? So we would want to have the setbacks match the zoning that they're going into. So the idea was brought up at the commission meeting when I presented this stuff at their meeting last. They said it was actually Evan's idea, was just to say, well, let's just have the setbacks be consistent with the adjacent zoning so that it's, when visually it's all kind of blending together instead of having something sticking out in a weird way along the street. So I think I like that idea, and that's how it's written right now in the code, in that draft for the standards. This isn't part of the zoning, but that would be for some of these areas, it's the same in terms of your net building area, because with highway commercial, for example, it's 20 feet in the rear, 20 feet in the front, and then 10 on either side. And so when it comes down to it, that's essentially the same as 15 feet all around when you're looking at the actual building area. So that was kind of the logic behind that. And then for the parking reduction, this is something that is a pretty big difference in reducing the parking requirement down to, for studio and 1 bedroom, 1.12, 1.125 for 2 bedroom. I actually think that this table is a little bit outdated, because in the code, in the draft use standards, I have it at 1.125 for studio, 2 bedroom would be 1.2, and 3 bedroom and larger would be 1.25. And that was based on some preliminary just research that I did on what other areas are doing for their parking reduction. And but the commission was concerned about this and wanting us to look into, like, you know, where people are, where there are jurisdictions that have used this parking reduction idea, and like if they're having any problems, if it's just going really well. So we have a little bit of research to do to finalize that part of it. But again, that's not what we're approving tonight. It's just the zoning district. But as far as like how the other standards that would be applied consistent with the HGHO, we would definitely still require the parking lot screening. And then for covered parking, we've gotten feedback that 100% of covered parking is very expensive and can drive up the cost of the units. So we're proposing to do only 50% for covered parking. And then not requiring a parking island. And then conforming to Ridgeline standards, of course. So those are the kind of the overview of the, kind of have to have an idea of what we're talking about for the development standards in order to feel like you can approve a zoning district. So that's why I wanted to focus on that. Any questions about what we're proposing here in this density bonus?
I'm curious if you could just speak to, I remember last meeting, I just tried to look at the minutes, but they're not, it just reminded me that we talked about this, but about the idea that this would not meld excellently with the HDHO. I can't remember what I remember that being brought up, and I remember the discussion. I can't remember the.
So when we were talking about it last time, it did get brought up in kind of a roundabout way. At that time, we were just discussing like an example of what we would maybe be looking at in the future for the density bonus for different zones. So it was like the HGHO, or sorry, the MFR 8, MFR 18, 35, and all the way up to 45. And those were the ones that were kind of coming into question,
Right.
whether or not we were gonna do like an AEH or primary residency. But this one, this is the highest density bonus that we would be offering, and it's also the most restrictive. So it goes beyond the HGHO in terms of what the deed restriction would be, and that is for income restricted units.
Cool. Thank you for reminding me. I just
Yeah.
like, could not.
No, I know,
quite pull it
that
out of my memory.
Definitely.
And this is not an overlay, an actual zoning district.
Yeah, it's an actual zoning district. So the idea has always been to try to get away from overlays and try to just,
Yeah, no, I definitely, I see the use for that. But just, how does that work when you do like, you have let's say you want to zone this. So where does the density bonus happen? Like when you try to upzone a place to this, that's when
it's built into the rezone
Okay.
approval. Yeah, and that would be all laid out in the development agreement
okay.
and deed restriction that would go with the property in perpetuity.
Mhm.
So even if the property was sold, then it would still be restricted in that way.
And so this would look like apartment, like multi,
Mhm.
like,
Oh, yeah.
so
Traditional
how does the
apartments.
ownership tend to look with these kind of places?
Not restricted for ownership because the units are for rent, they're rental units.
They're rental, so
Yeah.
is this a place where like big capital comes in and buys like 40 units at a time, or is it like you can
No.
own each one of these?
I think it
trying
would
to-
be, it would be a developer that would go through this very arduous and complicated low-income housing tax credit
Uh-huh,
application
right.
in order to make this pencil.
Uh,
And they would be the sole, developer seeing through the project and then,
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, this isn't a condominium.
no, this is not a condo,
Okay.
no, not at all. No, the units would not be sold individually.
Okay.
The covered parking requirement, and I just, this comes from the perspective of someone who's never parked under anything other than a tree. What is the function of that? And I say that just from the perspective of, building in Moab is really hard and expensive. And that to me could be another potential impediment. Sure, I would understand it would be a higher quality of life type thing, but is it a roadblock? So I'm just, I guess, curious, like, what is the point of it?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, it was definitely carried over from HGHO, because HGHO requires 100%, right? 100% covered parking. And so I guess we were kind of thinking that was something that was required. There was probably a good reason for it, and the commission would probably want to see that going forward, but we were going to propose reducing it by 50%. So it could be on the table for discussion to not require covered parking, for sure, as an option.
Yeah, great. That sounds great. I just asked that purely as I'm really curious. Like, what is there? Maybe there are some real positive correlations between that and health and this and that. But yeah,
Steve, as
what's
I
the?
understand it was proposed as maintaining a higher quality of life for units that were anticipated to be rented to individuals with less higher income. So you were right on track with that. Maintain a higher quality of life.
I do like it too that it's another surface for solar panels, and especially as if we truly are moving towards electric vehicles, I think it makes a lot of sense. But another question, just with oh gosh, the ridge line. I'm sorry, I'm failing to pull up the term in my mind. The ridgeline standards.
Yeah.
I know that's an issue that comes up from time to time of maybe that could be more defined.
Yeah,
I guess
that section is definitely problematic in our land use code, and we have some, it's on our list of updates for clarifying and improving that language for sure. I think the intent is there, but it's very hard to interpret, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Can we have like a little discussion on this, right?
In terms of whether you want to vote for it or not, or, because that would be
Well,
later.
here's my question. I look at these things and I see like large capital owning these things. And I'm kind of leery of that. I'm like, is there a way to build 45 units per acre that's individually owned?
So I think we could maybe have Cooper and maybe even Bob chime in on that, because they have been kind of working to communicate to the county that Cooper has the experience with building these kinds of things and going through the whole LIHTC application. And so I think that, yeah, it does seem, I was in the same position probably in the beginning of hearing this conversation, but the more that I've gotten to know what their products are and what they've done, the commission actually members, Commissioner McGann, Jacques and Bill all went and toured some of their projects up north that are
Oh,
the exact thing that they're
Wow.
proposing.
Hmm.
And so they were impressed. They said, this is the real deal, it's, you know, they proved it.
right, right. I just see
So,
one of our
but
big
yeah.
things is like, you know, we want pathways to ownership and
Well, that's HGHO. This is the other, this is for low income, very low income,
okay.
seasonal workers, people who would not be able to get an HGHO unit.
This is just to get-
HGHO is a
People
very
indoors.
different type of thing, and this is what everybody's been talking about, like, we
But
need housing
I
for
see
our
what we're
workers.
making a zoning code, like we're making a zoning thing and I'm like, well, maybe it's not fleshed out enough, you know, like do we need to have the zoning, like 45 units, oh, you can do this model, but you can also do this model for 45 units, you know, kind of thing. I'm just like, you know, making a zoning thing, to me is like a big move, right?
Well, it's opening up the possibility for building to that density.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And
I
that's why these standards that we have in the draft for the use standards, those need to be really, really good. And like, they
Yeah.
need to be exactly what, within the realm of what we can require for developers in terms of like, you know, you can't get down to specifically saying, we want you to only use the color gray. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
Like,
I get it,
but like quality, you can
Yeah.
still build in quality development standards
yeah.
within, and that
I-
has to be.
I look at our town and we have several apartment complexes here that are still owned locally. You know, the people, the owners, you know, we can go talk to them. And it's like, we're looking at things that change the character where it's like, oh, these are big corporate entities that like, you don't go talk to the owner, like you don't know where they live.
Mhm.
And, you know, I see that as a big move and, you know, like, you know, look at New York City, they have apartment complexes that are owned collectively in cooperatives and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, they might have the greatest project. I don't know about it. Maybe I should be, you know, maybe they can inform me more, but I'm just like, you know, like as a big move, it's like, is this the good one to do?
Well,
know.
and like individual developers wouldn't be the only applicants. I could foresee HASU as being an applicant, because they
Okay.
are the one main developers
Yeah.
that do these kinds of projects in their area. The only one that they have, that they've been able to do in the county, because we don't have the zoning, is the what's it called? Wingate subdivision. But yeah, they would be the other main developer that would be foreseeable that could come forward with a project. But they couldn't do it if we didn't have the density
Yeah.
allowed,
Yeah,
you know?
Ultimately, for lower cost housing, higher density is needed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's.
for sure. No, I
one's
yeah, I
a
totally
function of
agree
the
with
other,
that.
so,
Yeah.
And this is, just to be clear, like they have to apply for this
Oh, yeah.
zoning. So
That's
it's
a
not like
whole
it's not, yeah, it's not like this,
They're
they're
not-
handing this out like.
Yeah, no. They have to go through like what any applicant would have to go through for a rezone is two public hearings. It's a legislative process. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
I'm
that's
just-
not what
I agree with
we're
you, but I'm
talking
just trying to think about like.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we're all like, we're not just like opening a Pandora's box. It's
No.
like one small step, so.
Yeah, and so like the first part of this, I'll just read, the way that it's written. Let's see. So the purpose of this zone is to encourage development of low-income housing through a density bonus incentive to accomplish the county's goals of increasing housing diversity and meeting its estimate of additional very low to low-income housing needs. A property approved for the MFR 45 zoning district requires 100% of the housing units to be restricted to households with very low to low area median income as defined by HUD. Upon approval of a rezone to MFR 45, a site plan application shall be submitted and approved. Let's see. I'm trying to see where.
It seems pretty well defined that it's a certain corner of the market.
Yeah, and then, yes, sorry, the section I was trying to find was applicability. So MFR districts should be approved for properties identified in the Grand County future land use map once adopted, or if the flume has not been adopted at the time of the rezone request, the approving authority should seek guidance from the most recent version of the draft flume and that the planning and zoning department has on file. MFR districts approved under this section require a development agreement and deed restriction.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, great.
Me
Go
too,
for
Steve.
it.
I move to send a favorable recommendation to approve an ordinance establishing the MFR 45 density bonus incentive for low income housing.
I'll second.
I guess I would just say, I like hearing what you just said, Elisa, about having the, it sounds like there's a timeline set up. And it's not just, it wouldn't just approve this and then it just is open to interpretation. The map and these exact locations will be defined based on, kind of current drafts. I personally feel like they're in, for the most part, and I'd have to look at it again, but I feel like they're in appropriate areas close to the city. I think, focusing more on that west end of town where the ridge line, is going to be kind of closer up against the rim there. And I think to Aaron's point about, having some concern about, well, is this all just going to be out of town developer money coming in and, then the rental money is, not staying quite as local. I hear that concern and the desire to have more of like that co-op style. I think that's awesome and really ideal. And if something like this isn't passed, then neither of those options really ever happens. So by creating the pathway forward, then individuals, whether it's private or collective money, can figure out how they can move forward with it. And I like that.
Any other comments? Any other discussion?
I'm just blacking out this meeting currently, but did we open this up to public comment for everyone?
I don't think we did. Thanks, Makeda. Jerry, you're doing awesome. I think you're our newest member and you're taking charge. I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I hated to get this far with the meeting and then not actually go through with it. All right, so we'll open up for public comment. This is regarding the MFR 45 density bonus overlay or incentive. Okay.
I didn't know what it was
That's okay.
Okay,
We're glad you're here.
or what the details were.
Cooper or Bob, did you have any public comment on this item? Not that you have to, but just want to make sure.
Well, I think the way you presented it is most appropriate to answer the one question. These projects, we are an out-of-town developer. They are managed by a group that we contract with on a third-party basis that manages over 4,000 affordable apartment units. These units will be rented. There is no condominiumization of the units. They will be targeted to AMIs as low as 25% and up to 50% of the area median income. They are inspected twice a year, once by the state and once by the tax credit investor for compliance and maintenance. And so we have found in the past that they are extremely well maintained. There are monthly financial audits that are submitted to the tax credit investor and annual financial audits that are submitted to the Utah Housing Corporation. So these types of projects, even though they may be owned and managed by entities that are not localized in Moab. They are extremely well maintained and they are carefully monitored from a financial performance standpoint. So hopefully those points that I've raised may assuage any of those concerns. The density, the aspect of parking and covered parking, I think have been very well covered by Elisa. And we would hope that this type of project can be developed with the implementation of the MRF 45 zone.
Okay, any other discussion? Any questions? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimous.
Okay.
All right, well, let's move back to the earlier parts of the agenda then. Let's see. It is future land use plan workshop number 2, commercial uses for June 7th.
All right, thank you. So we've been planning this for a while, but we had to unfortunately change the date at least once. We kind of had a tentative date for this month, and then it got pushed to June, and then we realized June 1st was graduation. So we weren't gonna have a public workshop night on a graduation night. So we changed it to June 7th, and we're sticking with that. This is our future land use plan workshop number 2, and it's gonna be focusing on where the residents, well, first of all, we're gonna be kind of working out what people think are the commercial uses that would be appropriate in the South Moab, Spanish Valley area. And so kind of identifying what those commercial uses are, what kind of category they would go into as far as a zoning district, and then where on the map people think those uses should go. So we're gonna be looking for people to be really thinking outside the box and in 30 years out, and like, what kind of commercial development could you envision in the valley? So, you know, anything from like a salon to a dental dentist or optometrist, because those are all the things that I think of that we need, but we need more of those. And also light industrial, like woodworking, cabinetry shops, auto repair, all those kinds of things that you might be thinking are lacking in our area, and that you could envision actually being developed in the valley. And so that's happening June 7th. It's at the Old City Park Pavilion, which we're excited about that location. And we will be providing dinner and drinks, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout of folks. And then, so that's all I really have on that. Do you guys have any questions or any ideas about that?
I think that's great. We were talking a lot about that on the future land use map. So.
Yeah. Okay, so next item.
Yep, on to item number 3.
Okay, so finally, this is just plugging again the Housing Task Force. They're putting on their third, I believe it's the third housing series workshop on accessory dwelling units. And unfortunately, it's also on the same night as the Water Utility Resource Management Plan open house, which is being put on by the city. We apologize for this overlap. There was some miscommunication about the dates, and we're gonna try not to do that again. But I want to encourage everybody, if people out there in the public are listening, to try to make it to both workshops. I think it's very doable. One of the ADU workshop is at the Mark, and the water workshop is at the Grand Center. So they're not too far away, and I think you could double up and get get dinner. at
What
the
times are
ADU.
those?
I think they're both at 5 o'clock. Is that right? And I think they're both gonna have like food and beverages, so yeah, you could get like.
Only
double
food at
dinner.
ours. That's, yeah.
I wanted to share I wish I had the flyer up. Do we have it on social media? I wonder if it's on Instagram.
I think I saw it on there. I think they reposted it.
I think it is up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be really cool, the ADU workshop, the way that they've put it together, it's kind of like, in the beginning, it'll be a presentation with, folks from the county and the city and building departments from both jurisdictions, talking about the permitting process and how to go about getting a permit for an ADU and how actually it's, it's not that hard. It's permitted in every single zone. You just have to have the space. And then, of course, the financing. And there will be experts from across right here it says, financial lenders, contractors, and other experts will be there to answer questions. So there'll be kind of after the presentation, people can just go around to the different people and just pick their brain a little bit, and understand how to build an ADU. Anybody have any questions on that? All right.
So I think we already did. Is that it for item number 3?
Yep, that's it, yeah. And then so the last thing would be our future considerations.
And we already did citizens to be heard, right? So
We did, we did at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't think there's gonna be any. other
and there's no
citizens.
meeting, so I think we can move past that.
Yeah,
All right, so on to future considerations.
so this topic will be coming, I'm not sure if we're gonna get to it at the next planning commission meeting, but it's definitely something that's kind of bubbling up. The commission is showing interest in this topic and kind of working towards being more proactive with our enforcement in terms of illegal nightly rentals and not just leaving it up to neighbors to complain in order to enforce. There's also kind of this, we're seeing with code enforcement, and Josh has kind of been informing me that there's a lot of conflating between the two illegal uses, so illegal nightly rentals versus long-term residential camping. So we're seeing that we're kind of getting this feeling that like there's an idea that there's a lot more illegal nightly rentals that are actually maybe happening or vice versa. So what we want to start looking at is, can we really get some good data on the illegal nightly rentals? And we believe we can, because we have the software in order to get that data. And so we just kind of need more input from the commission and from you all too. I think it would be helpful to have this discussion and figure out, how we're going to start the strategy of being more proactive, because it's a big move. It's different than what we've been doing. So
What's this? I know we talked about this so many times. What's the status of the application or program that automatically comes through Airbnb and
yeah, so we're still working with the Economic Development Department to get that software funded and actually buy it. Right now, we've been using Granicus, and they're pretty good. They have, they can give us like a whole data set of I think it pulls from like all the advertising, online advertising for nightly rentals. So somehow it'll be able to show us like all the nightly rentals in the county. And then Josh has a way of comparing that list with who has business licenses for overnight rentals. And so wherever there's not a business license and there's a nightly rental being advertised, then we know that that might be a case where we could go and pursue enforcement, or at least inquire about it. So, yeah, so that's one of the things we're going to be presenting soon in this topic, is kind of our ideas of how we would go about this, and then just kind of wanting to get the blessing from the commission to go for that, because it could if we wanted to really fully go full enforcement, it would be bringing fines and like actual legal action, so.
Publicly shooting people.
And the laws don't mean much if you don't enforce them. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I just ask a question? I've been made aware of a lot of people like buying campers or like RVs and then parking them on BLM land and renting them out as Airbnbs.
really?
Like
You and I
like
both.
many I've seen pop up recently,
Wow. Huh.
among a few other that I'm like, that's probably not permitted, but I'm
That's
just
pretty cool.
curious if that's.
I don't know what
There's
that would be the
some
BLM's jurisdiction to
Yeah.
be cracking down on
Okay.
that.
That's not within our,
Not
because it's not
ours.
BLM.
Mhm.
Cool. I was just curious. That's why.
Yeah,
I know there's always that weird.
I don't think that we have any
So,
jurisdiction with
You
that.
can, there's a couple legit businesses here where you can rent, they go out and rent the campsite and then. you can-
Not those ones.
Yeah.
It's not those. They just drive it. They're just driving out to wherever and dropping a trailer that they.
drop a trailer and rent. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Mm.
Huh.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Cool.
So do we have any other business to discuss tonight?
The ADO, I just wanted to do kind of a quick heads up, the ADO ITAs,
Yes.
how many went through the, Green light?
Six of the 8 got blessings to move forward. Of course, the other 2 can if they'd like. And I do anticipate those 6 people submitting full applications. So that would leave, if those 6 applied and got approved, it would leave 2 additional units to be allowed during the 3rd round. So
Wow.
that could precipitate an expansion of the program, or not really sure.
yeah, the commission was a little split on that. So there was like, at that ADO workshop at the last meeting, they evaluated all the submissions and said that 6 would be good to move forward. And yeah, like Jenna said, the other 2, not so favorable, but they could still move forward if they wanted to. But they did say that, there was this kind of back and forth of like, well, maybe we should wait and see with some of these applications, let's just push them to the 3rd round and see what else comes about. And then the discussion kind of led more towards, well, actually, we need housing, so let's just do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And so they did, they went forward with the 6 and and the idea had been brought up about extending the program, but then I think that they kind of went back on that as well, where
Yeah,
they were
kinda went
saying,
back and forth on it a little bit. Like,
Yeah,
did they want to
so
see how this is gonna pan
see,
out? and
maybe
get
wait
built
and
out, or-
see how it goes once they get developed and they're on the ground for a year and then kind
It
of wait
takes a
and
long
see.
time to find
Yeah.
out and wait and see.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it's good to see some movement there. It's like,
And
Yeah.
it's desired. People call and ask about it all the time. I anticipate another full round of 6 or 8 applications during the 3rd round.
that was the thing. They were like, well, if we, don't limit the applications coming in, even if we only have 2 left in the program to approve under the cap. They were like kind of a push to the public was to say, go ahead and submit your applications, and if they're really good, we'll consider extending the program. So that was interesting. And the other thing of note was, 2 of the projects are tiny home developments. So they would actually be, and that was the only thing that the commission said they would want to approve, is if they could write it in the development agreement that they would stick to the tiny home development and not just go to RV sites. And say do what they're saying in their original proposal, which was tiny homes. So, yeah.
There were so many good applications.
Yeah,
They were
that's
all
awesome.
so good,
wow.
I think.
Like a condominiumized tiny home, was that the one that they?
We
No.
didn't write it into the code that they could be condominiumized.
Oh, really? I thought-
Originally, we
Yeah.
had talked about that, but then it
Okay.
got pulled out.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Were most of the applicants so far in like commercial areas or is it a mix?
That seemed to be the easy yes by commission, is if you're in highway commercial, yes.
Yep.
There were, 2 given favorable recommendation, that one was in rural residential, one was in LOR.
Mhm.
Yeah, but large lot residential is one of the preferred zoning districts still, so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
just bite my tongue, so. great.
Yeah,
All right, that's all we have.
okay.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion, let me adjourn.
I'll say.
Second. All in favor? We're adjourned.